I don't remember the first time we spoke. That's the strange part. You'd think I'd have it stored away, the moment her voice first landed in my ear, but it's blurry, like background noise. What I do remember is the first time I noticed her. It was in the little coffee shop across from the office, the one with the scratched wooden counters and the chalkboard menu no one ever updated. I'd been standing in line, pretending to scroll through my phone, when I caught her reflection in the glass display case. She was ahead of me, tapping her card against the reader with that faint impatience people get when they've done the same routine 100 times. 2 sugars, not 3 this time, the barista asked her. She gave this half smile, almost embarrassed, and shook her head. Trying to be good. I don't know why that stuck with me. I barely knew her then, just another colleague, another name on a crowded email chain. But the way she stood, the way her eyes flicked downward as if she didn't want to be looked at for too long, it drew me in. When it was my turn, I ordered the same as always. Black. No sugar. No milk. I didn't even like it that way, but it felt easier than deciding something new every morning. Routine keeps you from thinking too hard. That day, though, she turned slightly, caught me standing there, and for a second our eyes met. Just a second. Enough for me to clear my throat and look away, suddenly aware of how tightly I was gripping my phone. We started crossing paths more often after that. Not deliberately, at least not at first. A laugh overheard in the break room, an exchange about the printer always jamming on the 3rd floor, little nothings that didn't mean much at the time. But I noticed myself listening more carefully when she spoke to others. Not the words, her words were ordinary, work-shaped. It was the pauses, the way she sometimes caught herself mid-sentence, as if weighing whether she'd said too much. I think that's when the loneliness I never admitted to myself started pressing harder. It wasn't loud, no big heartbreak, no tragedy. Just small things. A row of unread texts I couldn't bring myself to answer. A chair at my apartment table that was always empty. The kind of silence you learn to live with until something interrupts it. She was my interruption. One afternoon, late, when most people had already left, I walked into the office kitchen. She was there, rinsing out a thermos. The fluorescent lights made everything look harsher than it needed to, but she didn't seem to notice. She turned her wrist slowly under the stream of water, quiet, focused. I stood there longer than I should have before speaking. Working late again? My voice came out softer than I meant. She glanced up, smiled faintly, and shrugged. Deadlines don't care about sleep. I laughed, a little too quickly. Yeah. Guess not. She didn't answer right away, just placed the thermos upside down on the rack, water dripping steadily into the sink. Then she leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. Her eyes lingered on me a fraction too long, and I felt my throat tighten. I busied myself with folding the corner of a napkin, pretending it mattered. We didn't talk much more that night. A few small exchanges, both of us half distracted. But when I finally gathered my things and started for the elevator, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message. Her name on the screen. Still awake. That was all it said. And for the first time in months, I didn't hesitate before typing back. The first message turned into 10. Then 20. Not all in one night, spread out over weeks, late hours when the city felt thinner, when the walls of my apartment seemed to lean in. Her words weren't dramatic. She asked if I'd seen the latest project draft, if I thought the coffee shop had changed their beans, if I'd ever stayed up just to hear rain on the roof. I answered honestly, but always slower than I wanted, careful not to sound too eager. Still, I kept the phone close, waiting for the small vibration that meant she was awake too. One evening, I told her about how I used to sit in my dad's old car long after it broke down. The radio didn't even work, I typed, but it smelled like summer. Like when things felt easier. The typing dots appeared, then disappeared. For a long stretch, nothing. I thought maybe I'd gone too far, been too open. Then her reply came through, "I know that smell. For me it's my grandmother's kitchen, burnt toast and laundry detergent. That's the one place I still dream about." I read it over and over, like it contained more than she meant me to see. At work, nothing seemed different on the surface. We passed each other in hallways, swapped updates in meetings, made jokes about the broken air conditioning. But there was a shadow beneath it now, something we both pretended not to notice. Once, in the break room, she reached for a mug at the same time I did. Her fingers brushed mine, light, accidental, but it carried a charge. She didn't pull back quickly. Instead, she let her hand rest just a fraction longer than necessary. And I, uselessly, pretended to be focused on the kettle starting to boil. I told myself to stop. She was in her 40s, steady in ways I wasn't. A colleague. Maybe even someone people looked at with expectations, unspoken rules about how she should behave, how I should behave around her. If anyone noticed, what then? But every time I tried to push the thought away, it returned in small, disarming ways. The way she remembered my tea order. The way she sat across from me in the cafeteria, even when the other tables were empty. The way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, quietly, like she was memorizing. One night after staying late, I found her in her office, leaning over a stack of papers. She looked tired, her hair loose around her shoulders in a way I hadn't seen before. I offered to help, and she let me sit beside her, passing files back and forth. We worked mostly in silence, but it wasn't the heavy kind. It was a silence that hummed. At one point, she laughed softly at a mistake she'd made, pressing her palm to her forehead. I reached out without thinking, just to nudge the folder closer to her hand. My knuckles brushed against hers. She didn't move away. She just looked at me. Long enough that I had to glance down, pretending to straighten the papers. But I knew. That moment stayed with me, not because anything happened, but because it felt like someone finally saw me. The rhythm between us was fragile, like a thread stretched too tight. Some nights we talked until my phone battery gave out. Other days at work, we barely made eye contact, as if we both agreed not to let anything show. But something had shifted after that night in her office, the brush of knuckles, the long pause that said more than either of us wanted to admit. I caught myself watching her differently. Noticing the way she adjusted her glasses when she was thinking, or how she tapped her pen against her notebook when she disagreed in meetings but didn't want to say it out loud. It felt dangerous, this noticing. Like if I paid too much attention, someone else would see it too. And then, one afternoon, someone did. We were standing by the coffee machine. She was laughing at something, soft, quiet, the kind of laugh you lean into without realizing. I didn't hear footsteps until one of our colleagues appeared, grabbing a cup, glancing between us. "You two always hiding out in here," he teased. She froze, mug half raised. My throat tightened. "Just caffeine," she said quickly, and turned away, stirring her coffee longer than necessary. The moment collapsed into silence, and the colleague left without another word. But I saw it, the way she kept her eyes on the mug instead of me, the small crease between her brows. After that, she pulled back. Not completely, but enough. No late texts that week. At work, her voice stayed neutral, her smile polite. It shouldn't have bothered me as much as it did, but it did. The absence made the air heavier. One evening, I stayed late again, telling myself it was for the project, not for her. I heard her before I saw her, papers shuffling, a chair scraping back. I almost turned around, almost left, but my feet carried me into the doorway of her office. She looked up, startled. Then sighed. "You shouldn't still be here." Neither of us moved. I wanted to tell her I missed the quiet messages, the way she lingered when no one was watching. But all I managed was, "Neither should you." Her lips pressed into a faint smile, tired but real. She gestured toward the stack of files. "Deadlines again." I walked in, pulled up a chair. We worked side by side for a while, the room filled with nothing but the sound of shuffling pages and the clock ticking on the wall. At one point, our hands reached for the same pen. She pulled back too quickly this time. "Sorry," she murmured. I shook my head, but my chest ached in a way I couldn't name. When the files were finally sorted, she leaned back, rubbing her eyes. The weariness softened her. She looked at me then, really looked. "I don't," she started, then stopped. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "This is complicated." I didn't answer. My hand hovered over hers on the desk, inches away, waiting for a signal I wasn't sure would come. For a moment, she didn't move. The air between us shifted, close enough that if I leaned forward, if she didn't turn away, but then she stood, gathering the papers, breaking the spell. "Good night," she said softly, not meeting my eyes. And I was left there, wondering if I'd imagined the almost. It happened on a Thursday. Not an extraordinary day, just the kind of late afternoon when the office emptied early and the city outside hummed with the sound of traffic heading home. I found her by the side entrance, waiting with her coat draped over her arm, phone in hand but unread. For once, she didn't notice me right away. I almost walked past, but something in her stillness held me there. "Heading out?" I asked. She looked up, startled, then gave a small smile. "Just needed air." We ended up walking together, neither of us saying much at first. The pavement was wet from a drizzle earlier, reflecting the streetlights just starting to glow. My steps slowed to match hers. Every so often, our shoulders nearly brushed, but neither of us shifted away. We stopped at a bench near the corner, one of those city benches no one really uses. She sat, smoothing the edge of her coat across her lap, and I joined her, leaving just enough space to pretend it wasn't intentional. For a while, the only sound was the traffic. She twisted her phone in her hands, then set it down beside her, as if it was too heavy to hold. "I shouldn't be here," she said finally, eyes fixed on the passing cars. I swallowed. "With me, you mean?" Her silence was answer enough. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, searching for something to say. But all that came out was, "Did I do something?" Her head turned slightly, her gaze brushing mine before sliding away again. "No. That's the problem." I frowned. "I don't," she cut me off, softly. "You don't see it, do you? The looks. The way people notice when we're in the same room too long. I hear it. Quiet things. And I can't afford that." Her voice cracked, not loud, but enough. I stared at her profile, at the tired strength in it, and something sharp moved in my chest. The words slipped out before I could stop them. "So what do we do, then? Just ignore this?" Her hands clenched in her lap, then released. She exhaled slowly, almost like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. "I've tried." A pause. "God, I've tried." I turned toward her, closer than I should have been. Her eyes finally met mine, unguarded, raw. And for the first time, I saw it clear, fear, yes, but also something that mirrored what I'd been carrying. She gave the smallest laugh, broken at the edges. "You're too young for this. Too young for me." The words should have pushed me back, but they didn't. I felt myself leaning in, not all the way, just enough that the air thinned between us. My hand lifted, then faltered halfway, not daring to bridge the distance. Her gaze dropped to my mouth, then back to my eyes. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, her voice came, quiet, trembling but steady enough to slice through me. "What happens if we stop pretending?" The question lingered between us, what happens if we stop pretending, but we never answered it. Maybe that was safer. The next morning at work, she was different. Not cold, not cruel, just distant in a way that left no edges to hold on to. Her smile was polite, her tone clipped back into the safe, professional version of herself. She didn't look at me in meetings, didn't linger near the coffee machine, didn't send a single late-night message. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. That she was just busy. That people shift in and out of moods. But it built in me, this hollow awareness of being shut out without explanation. A week passed before I saw her leaving early, coat over her shoulders, head lowered. Impulse made me follow her out onto the street. "Hey," I called, softer than I meant. She stopped, glanced over her shoulder, then forced a smile. "Long day." I wanted to say more, to press, but the words tangled. All I managed was, "Yeah." She hesitated, then added, "My daughter's in town." I froze. Not because of the word itself, I'd known she was divorced, had picked up small pieces of her life from passing comments, but because of the way she said it. Like an explanation. Like a barrier. I nodded, though my chest felt tight. "That's good." She gave a small smile, almost apologetic, and kept walking. I didn't follow. The following days were worse. She started eating lunch at her desk instead of in the cafeteria. If our eyes met in the hallway, she glanced away too quickly. The absence of her presence pressed louder than her presence ever had. I told myself to let it go. To move on. To remind myself that she had a life stitched together long before I stepped into it, one with obligations, with people who needed her in ways I didn't. But I kept catching myself pulling out my phone, typing a message, then deleting it before it could be sent. "How are you? Do you miss it too?" Was it only me? None of them ever made it past the draft box. The strangest part wasn't sadness. It was something quieter. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. One evening, I lingered outside her office door, hand raised to knock. Through the frosted glass, I could see her silhouette, bent over her desk, unmoving. I stood there long enough for my arm to ache, long enough to imagine her looking up, opening the door, letting me in. But I lowered my hand. Walked away. The bench where we once sat stayed empty when I passed it. The late-night buzz of my phone never returned. And still, every time I folded a napkin, or brushed my knuckles against a pen, the ghost of her hand was there. I kept waiting for something to break the silence. It never did. It was late when I saw her again, not in the office, not even near it. Just outside the grocery store on a Sunday night, a basket hooked in her arm. Ordinary. She didn't notice me at first, and I almost let it stay that way. But then she paused at the entrance, adjusting her coat, and I heard myself say her name. She turned, startled, then softened. "You shop this late too?" I shrugged, holding up a basket of my own. Avoids the crowds. We ended up walking the aisles together, both of us reaching for the same half-priced coffee, both pretending not to notice how strange it felt to be side by side after weeks of silence. She picked up cereal, I picked up bread. The smallness of it made something ache in me. When we stepped out into the cool night, neither of us moved toward our cars right away. We stood under the buzzing streetlight, plastic bags rustling in our hands. "I didn't mean to," she started, then stopped. Her breath clouded in the air. "I didn't mean to disappear." I nodded, though I wanted more than that. "I figured you had reasons." Her eyes flicked to mine, searching. "It's not you. It's just," she broke off again, pressing her lips together. Then, quieter, "I get scared. Of being seen in ways I shouldn't." The word sat between us, heavier than the bags in my hand. I thought about all the unsent messages, the empty bench, the knock I never made. And for once, I decided not to retreat. "I don't care how it looks," I said, not loudly, but steady. I don't want to pretend it's nothing." Her face tightened, like she'd been holding her breath for months and didn't know how to let it go. She set her bag down on the pavement, rubbed her temples, then looked straight at me. "You're too young for me," she said again, but this time it wasn't a wall. It was a confession. And I'm tired of always choosing safe. Silence stretched. A car passed in the distance. I shifted the bread in my hand, trying not to fumble the moment. "I'm not asking for safe," I said quietly. "I just want honest." Her shoulders dropped, the tension unwinding like a rope finally loosened. She gave a small, almost broken laugh, then reached out, hesitant, halfway, before resting her hand lightly on my arm. Just a touch. Barely there. But it was enough. We stood like that for a long moment, neither rushing to fill the silence. Just breathing the same night air, two people holding the fragile truth between them. Finally, she exhaled, eyes still on me. "Okay." And that was it. No promises. No declarations. Just the soft weight of a word I'd been waiting to hear. Time didn't stop for us. It never does. Deadlines kept coming. Coffee cups kept stacking up in the sink. Morning still smelled like burnt toast in the office kitchen. But something shifted quietly after that night outside the grocery store. We didn't announce it. There was no line drawn between before and after. Instead, it worked its way in through small routines, the same way her laugh once slipped through the cracks of my day. Sometimes she sat across from me in meetings again, eyes lifting just long enough to catch mine before moving on. Sometimes, late at night, my phone buzzed, not every night, not like before, but enough. "You awake?" And my answer always came faster than it used to. One evening, weeks later, we found ourselves walking the same way home. Rain had just ended, the pavement shining, carrying the reflection of streetlights. We reached the same empty bench from before, the one no one used, and this time she didn't keep walking. She sat down, her bag pressed against her knees. I sat beside her, leaving the right amount of space that didn't stay empty for long. She poured tea from her thermos, the same one I'd seen her rinse out all those late nights, and handed me the lid. "Not black coffee," she said with a faint smile. I took a sip. Too sweet, but warmer than anything I'd had in a while. We didn't talk much. The silence had stopped being heavy. It became something else, something shared. Her hand rested near mine on the bench, not touching, but close enough that I didn't feel alone in the pause. Life didn't turn perfect. It never does. She still had her daughter to visit, her own world of history and responsibilities that I only touched the edges of. I still had my quiet apartment, my unread messages, my uncertainty about everything that came next. But the space between us had changed. She let me in. Carefully, slowly, but she did. One morning, at 8:47 a.m. exactly, I walked into the coffee shop. She was already there, stirring 2 sugars into her cup. When the barista asked for my order, she answered for me, "Black, no sugar," before I could speak. She glanced back, a small smile curving her lips, like it had always been this way. And I realized then, it wasn't about big declarations. It was about knowing each other's rhythms, the sugar she gave up, the napkin I always folded, the silence that had once pressed against us but now held us steady. We left the shop together, cups in hand. At the door, she touched my arm, just a brush, the same way she had that night under the grocery store lights. This time, I didn't mistake it for hesitation. I don't know what will be tomorrow. I don't know how people will see us, or if we'll ever feel entirely safe in it. But as we stepped into the morning rush, side by side, I knew this much: we'd stopped pretending. And that was enough. Sparkle's engagement close. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?